if you want to be consistent with content creation, you must stop doing something in your life.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Church Circle podcast, the podcast that celebrates church creatives. Now we are flying through this season and this is episode 7 of the podcast, and I am joined today by none other than Edward Sun of Atlanta, Georgia. And he is up early. This is like 2:30 p.m. my time, so he's like 9 a.m. He's doing a podcast at 9 a.m. guys. And Edward, how are you?
I'm doing great. I am so thrilled to be here, and I am excited to talk to you, my friend.
That was the most AI response. No, but
well, it is. I'm genuine. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. And for context, if you guys don't know who Edward is, firstly, go and follow him at Edward Creates. But Edward is a friend of mine, a true friend of mine, and we started out on this whole Instagram Christian creative community thing pretty much exactly the same time, January 2020. 2 months before the world went crazy. And so we've been kind of on this journey together in similar capacities. We've definitely kind of, in terms of our style, have gone different ways and converged. And we're on this journey together. So we talk quite a lot offline and about, this journey that we've been on. And that's partly what we're going to talk about today is about navigating social media, about being true to yourself on social media, and avoiding some of the pitfalls. And so I'm excited to get into this conversation today. But maybe for people who don't know you, Edward, maybe just share a little bit about yourself and maybe some of your journey so far.
Yeah, well, I'm a graphic designer based in Atlanta. I work full-time at a creative agency here. But on the side, I make a lot of social content just around graphic design, creativity, faith. And I'm heavily involved in creative roles at my local church also. So basically during COVID, started posting a ton and then met awesome people like Ruben here and Pro Church Media. And then ever since then, this account social media content creation thing has just taken me to wild places. And I've had ups and downs on my journey, but I'm here.
And I think we're going to get into some of those ups and downs in a second. But if you guys are listening, I would kind of describe what Edward's backdrop is right now. But Edward is a man of many talents. He's a jack of all trades. And I'm looking at, in the background, a poster that he designed. So he's not only great at video and logo design and branding and all kinds of stuff, but he's also an artist as well. So he has so much knowledge, and again, he's serving the local church with all those skills and wisdom. And so this is going to be a great conversation, and I'm excited to dive into it. Now, Edward, you kind of touched on your journey onto social media so far, how you got started, but I know there's a bit of a music background for you, and maybe just kind of share how you've got up to this point on social media.
Yes, I did. So I used to want to be a rapper. That was my life dream. And then I kind of stumbled because I kind of ran out of money trying to work in the music industry. By the grace of God, he provided a job in an industry that I had no professional experience in as a graphic designer. Kind of the owner of the company that I work for now, he just took a chance on me. He saw my work ethic and my eagerness to learn, gave me a chance as a designer. Since then, I've learned everything that I know about design on that job. And that kind of made me realize I am more passionate about design and visual arts than I am about music. And also, people throughout my life have told me, you do have visual, you're kind of gifted with visual communication. But I was just like, no, I'm going to be a rapper. Don't tell me that. I'm not going to do that, But yeah, so as I started to do more of the work, I kind of realized I actually am more passionate about this than music. Since then, when COVID hit, I was like, wow, nothing is guaranteed. Not this job that I have, my life, my family, all that stuff. So that led me to ask myself, how can I kind of hedge my risk and manage that better so that if something does happen to me unexpectedly, maybe it'll be easier to get on my feet again. And one of the answers for me was social media, like trying to build an audience. Just if I can have an audience, it just seemed easier for me to get to a new place if I needed to, right? And so, so I started posting just like a graphic every day. And at the same time, I was doing a lot of client work that did not really give me the opportunity to experiment creatively. And I felt like I had so much like in my heart that I wanted to express through creativity that I didn't have the chance to with client work. So I just saw it as like number one, let me reduce my risk if something happens to me. But number two, let me grow as much as I can as a designer. So I make something every day. And so I started to make a graphic, post every day. Pro Church Media actually the second day reposted one of my graphics. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many other Christian creatives who are awesome, you know? And being a part of that community really gave me the excitement that I needed to continue doing that every day. And then I was like also seeing so many like amazing ideas from all these other Christian creatives that I was like, I want to try that. I want to try this guy's style. I want to, do all that. So every day I was trying new things. It was really fun and exciting, but also like one of the few things I could do during that time because client work did slow down in 2020. But yeah, so that was like one phase of my journey. And then like it was all just graphics based on scripture, either scripture, quotes from preachers, like Christian ideas, all of that. And then I think maybe it was a year and a half in, something like that. AI, generative AI became a thing. And along the way, I had already been trying new tools. So like I was using like Filter Forge and like all these different, like I was using After Effects for like animating for the first, I was like really trying to try all these tools. And so this just to me seemed like another tool. So I was like, let me just, for 3 days, I'm going to try playing around with Midjourney AI and then post that, right? And I did that. It was like, actually I didn't enjoy it that much. It was not that great, but it was cool, but it was definitely not where it is today. But then Instagram told me, like, if you make a Instagram reel, like not just a graphic anymore, but a video, we will pay you based on views. And then I was like, well, my whole, like one of my big goals was to like hedge my risk, like not just have all my eggs in one basket. So like this kind of is an opportunity, I felt like. So I just tried to make a video about how I made one of those Midjourney graphics images, and then it just blew up like insane. It was like the first video, the first day got to like 200,000 or 300,000 views, and then I had 5,000 followers at the time.
I remember this.
I was used to, if I get over 100 likes on a graphic, that is super successful, well-performing graphic, and then so just to get like hundreds of thousands of views was like, this is mind-blowing to me. And I was posting at the time every day, so I did like 2 more videos like that, and all of them just exploded. Eventually all of them got over millions of views, and it just seemed like every video I post was exploding, as long as it was around AI. And so I went from like 5,000 followers to over 100,000 followers in the span of like a few weeks. That was like a crazy experience for me. And I think, we can get into this more, but I don't think I was ready for that, really. And then, after that whole thing, I got to this point where I realized, I feel like I have to keep making AI content because that's what 95,000 of my followers want from me. But I didn't feel fulfilled. And it wasn't it, like, you know, I started it because I wanted to express like the things that I cared about. And this kind of took me away from that. So I kind of stepped away. I got burnt out, stepped away from all of that. And then recently, so this was like, maybe I took a year break, something like that. It was a long break. I came back recently just deciding I'm just going to post whatever I want to post, and whatever I want to talk about, help the people that I think I want to help and I'm most equipped to help, which is traditional graphic design and, you know, faith and creativity. And I have felt so great.
That's great.
Since then. And I've kind of pivoted completely my audience, which was a whole process also. But that's the entire journey of Edward Creates.
So far. I really appreciate your honesty in that, because and I think we will go into this in a second. There is a lot of pressure, especially for content creators, and I hate using that word, content creators, but you know, that's kind of the category that we fall into. There is a lot of pressure to perform, to, you know, especially when there's a career involved, or there's part of your career is tied up with social media. There's a lot of pressure to perform, and I think regardless of the size of your following, there is always that pressure. You know, I know creatives that have been, you know, have left agencies or moved away from agencies, and they didn't update their portfolio for 2 years on Instagram, or didn't post anything, and then they're like, oh no, like I need to get back out there, and then they're playing catch up. Or I know people that you know, they might sell, I don't know, merch or something, and you know, they have like a really intense period of posting, and then they just disappear for 6 months, and there's a lot of pressure around it, because it is something that is if you don't have the passion involved, or if you don't have the motivation to keep going, you will burn out quick. And because there is no, with social media, it's so, no one's afraid to say anything. Like, everyone is like, they all say whatever they want. The comment section is full of people who will say things they would never say to your face. The algorithms quite often make your content look way worse than it is, or way better than it is, in terms of, you know, there might be something super simple that you spend 20 minutes on and that will blow up, and then there might be something that you spend 5 or 6 hours on and that doesn't do very well in terms of Instagram metrics. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, in terms of attaching your self-esteem to stuff like that, it can be really, really damaging. So yeah, it's interesting. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is because I know there's a lot of creatives out there that are feeling the pressure to create stuff they think is going to do well, whether it's trending, or whether it's you know, just things they've seen on Instagram already, and they're like, I want to do something similar. But then your approach was, I did that, I got nothing out of that, I got burnt out. I took some time away, and I came back and I did stuff I wanted to do. And you know, if you kind of look at Edward's journey in terms of, if you look at it as followers, you talked about kind of like 95% were AI based. Then you switched your content, and you saw a regression in your following. And then now the people that have turned up are the ones that want to actually follow your journey. And now you're like, you've surpassed your AI high of following, right? Like, you're now, I don't know, what, 130 something thousand followers, mm-hmm. which is, you know, amazing. It's a really cool example of how people, you know, given the fact that if they can mix passion and consistency together, their content more often than not does really well. And that's not to say that's the magic recipe and that's going to get you everything you need or want on social media, but it is something that I think a lot of content creators have found, is that if you mix the passion and the consistency together, and you find a rhythm that's sustainable, you will see some form of success, depending on what your definition of success is. So when you took your year out, or however long this break was, were you doubting yourself creatively? Was there, you know, were you thinking maybe this is something that I should just carry on with? Like, maybe I'm just, you know, maybe I just need to work harder, or maybe I'm not trying hard enough? Or was this like no, I know this isn't good for me, I need to take the time out? And were you planning on coming back, or was it just something you just was like, I'm ready to go back into now?
So I know that I always had the desire to go back, but I think I was so burnt out with it that I wasn't ready to do that. So I guess in the back of my mind, yes, I wanted to go back eventually. But what ended up happening was I felt done with graphic design. Like, I felt like graphic design, making content, like everything that I was doing that was tied to the opinion of another person, I was just like, I want to step away from that. Like, it was so, I felt like it sucked me dry, you know? And I was like, if I ever engage with that again in any way, I'm just going to feel that burnout, that like pressure to like please everybody, and the obsession with the numbers and all of that. And I had gotten to the point where it took such a toll on me that I could not go back. So I started to think, like, you know, even though in my day job I was still doing client work, it was so draining for me because it kind of triggered that same feeling that I got from Instagram, which was, I'm making this work. If the client doesn't like it, then that just determines the success of the project. You know, like the opinion of another person. Still, it doesn't matter what I want as the creative. So I intentionally leaned into a creative outlet that was not tied to the opinion of another person. So I got into photography and videography. And it was like freedom for me. It was like freedom. It was healing. It was like learning how to create again without the pressure or expectation of being good. Like, I could just be bad and there's no consequences. You know, nobody's paying me or expecting me to be good. And it was the excitement of like learning about a new craft, learning about a new world, and being able to like see my own progress in like taking something that I have in my mind and expressing it creatively. That to me was what I needed to heal. It was like, it made me fall back in love with the craft, and it gave me a separation from the opinions of others. And then it made me realize, no, actually, I'm not done with graphic design. I'm just done with the opinion of other people. You know, I'm done with like letting what the algorithm says or what the audience says, like, dictate what I do and what I create. And so, yeah, that was, I think, the turning point for me. I got deep into that. I made, I think, a few YouTube videos, but it wasn't like I'm sticking to a schedule. I was just like, I'm going to make this because I made it. Might as well upload it, but that's it.
Yeah.
You know? But those times were like, I got deep into how to light things, how to color things, how to make compositions in frame and camera and all the lenses and all that stuff. So yeah, I think that was really life-giving. And then I also had to spend time like really being honest with myself that I cannot do the things that I think I can and stay healthy.
Sure.
I think I don't know about, I just know, I'll speak for myself, like as a creative, a self-driven creative, like very passionate, I want to do everything. Like, I want to do all the things, and that includes social media, and that includes client projects and all of these other like adjacent fields related to design. I had to be honest with myself and say, like, if I want to have an intimate, rich relationship with God, and I want to be present and held accountable and have meaningful connection in my local church community, and I want to have a healthy marriage, I can't do everything, and I have to stop doing a lot of the things I was doing, and just focus on like a few specific things. And with that mindset, I was able to come back and ask myself, well, then what would it look like for me to come back to social media and do this in a sustainable way that is healthy, you know? And that's what has brought me to where I am today.
Church Circle launched last week and it's thriving, and I really want you to be part of it. If you've ever felt unheard in all the social media groups you've been part of, Not getting the answers or support you need? Then Church Circle is the place for you. It's an active community where church staff, pastors, and creatives like you come together to share insights, offer guidance, and genuinely support each other. I got tired of posting in those huge, inactive Facebook groups and hearing crickets. So I joined Church Circle. People's questions don't just get answered, they spark conversations. I really believe we're building something special here. A place where you're not just another pixel on a screen, but a person with a story, with a place in our community. Click the link in the episode's description to see what a real, engaged online community looks like. You can be part of 27 Facebook groups, or you can be part of one Church Circle. Trust me, it's a world of difference. Can't wait to see you there.
That's really good. It's interesting that you kind of stripped it back to almost like what are your basic priorities in life, and how does what you do on social media like fit in with that, and does it even fit in with that? I feel like modern life, especially as we're in this digital age now, has become it's such a juggling act of everything. Like me and Megan, my wife, were talking the other week, and we were talking about like how there is something that has to give because we're balancing family life, house renovations, Instagram, running a business, all of these things, church life, friends, family. And you're like, one thing has to give. And sometimes it's sleep, but that's not sustainable. Like, I'm in a period right now, personally, if I'm being honest, where sleep is a struggle for me because I've got a lot of things to do in my life. But that's not a sustainable method. That's just something had to give. And so quite often, when you actually do the calculations and you look at the hierarchy of priorities in your life, it's God, it's family, it's church, it's probably your work, and social media falls very lower in that list. But quite often we flip it the other way around, and we hold social media as the highest priority. We must post at this time. We've got to keep checking the algorithm. Like, it's one of the things that takes up the most of our time in life. I'm sure there's people out there that spend more time scrolling on Instagram than they do actually working during the day. And that's not to call anyone out. It's just to say that sometimes what we think is not a priority in our life actually has become the main priority, and it requires a reshift and a refocus and almost putting social media back in its place. And I think that's interesting. Now, I'm conscious of time, and this conversation is very intriguing to me. But I want to kind of get into the what you noticed. We're talking about that break, that gap year, if we call it that, where you're talking about burnout. Did you have any key identifiers for burnout? What I want to do with this is kind of highlight some of the identifiers of burnout and see if anyone who's listening can relate. And then maybe we can move into, okay, well, what are some of the ways that we can overcome this in terms of putting out content? So when you're looking at your burnout period, what you talked about, like, you're not wanting to create stuff in general. Were there any other like identifiers? Like, did you notice it in your personal life, like just the way you behaved, the way you thought? Were there any identifiers that maybe people can relate with?
The number one thing for me that tells me I'm going to burn out and I need to address this is when I have things I want to do, but I cannot do them because of something outside of my control. Maybe it is in my control, but it's like in that time I was like, I want to express myself creatively, but I feel like I can't. Or I want to explore these other tools, but I feel like I have to stick with AI. Or I want to do a passion project for graphic design, but I have no time because I'm making content every single day. It's like when we feel like there is something else we want to do and we don't have the freedom or the ability to do it anymore, that is always the situation that leads me to burnout. Because if you feel aligned, like if you feel called, if you feel like God wants me to do this, I want to do this, and the world is benefiting from me doing this, you can probably do the thing, whatever it is, indefinitely, sustainably, And if no new desires come up, if nothing is competing, like, you can do it forever. But for me, it was this tension that I felt between what I wanted and what I felt like I had designed for myself that had no flexibility to allow for that anymore. The longer you persist in that state, you will just be drained as a person, especially as a creative. And I think that's That's the number one thing. Like it might be a toxic work environment, might be a project that you don't like, or a client that's not great to work with. Those types of things I think will lead to that point if you don't change the situation.
It sounds like there's an intentionality as well. It's like if your schedule is 100% of I need to do this to achieve my goals, but then I want to do something else and I don't have the time to do it or the capacity to do it, that's where the burnout comes, because you're trying to carry everything, and then the one thing you actually want to reach for you can't grab because you've got your hands full with other stuff. I'm hoping that whoever's listening is thinking, okay, maybe they're connecting some of the dots, and like, maybe I am going through burnout and I didn't realize. And I think the great thing about if we can catch it early is it's much easier to implement things now than it is to just have to drop everything. You know, whether that's, so I know people that have had to be like signed off from work for stress, or have to just drop all of their projects and just move. That's a pretty catastrophic way of dealing with burnout. And maybe the best way to do that is for us to identify it now in the early stages and say, okay, what are some of the ways we can achieve our goals, particularly in the way of content creation? Because I think everyone wants to, in some way, put out something on social media. When I say everyone, I'm talking about the audience that's listening right now. There's a desire to share, either, whether it's faith or creativity or inspiration or encouragement or education, whatever it is. There's a desire to share that. So, Edward, do you have any tips for someone who is maybe struggling to put out content right now? They want to do it. Maybe they've just self-identified as burnout, and they're like thinking, okay, I need to curb that first. What's the steps to curbing that? And then what's the steps to maybe putting out some content sustainably?
Yeah, this is the question. The question is how to achieve consistency when you're starting. There's a few things I will say. One is, if you want to be consistent with content creation, you must stop doing something in your life. You have to make the space for it.
Sure.
You can't just add it. I think a lot of us will tell ourselves, we need to sacrifice sleep. I just wake up an hour earlier or whatever. Or I need to hang out with people less, or I need to watch shows less, or whatever. You have to make a decision with clear boundaries. What will you stop doing? From, if it's a certain number of hours, if it's a certain time block every week, whatever it might be, you need to make a decision that you must stop doing something in order to start doing this thing, because this will take time, your time. And it is not, you're not going to see the fruit if you don't do it for a long time. That's one thing. You have to stop doing something.
Yep.
The second thing is, I think you need to create boundaries around the things that do matter to you in your life. Ask yourself, what are my biggest priorities in my life? And how can I protect that no matter how busy I get in my life, no matter how busy I get with content creation, because things get crazy. Like, life happens. We can't predict that. It will happen and create tension. Even if we've been doing it great for 4 weeks, perfect schedule, perfect plan, things happen to mess that up. You need to have boundaries that you will never breach because of what you believe, because of what's important to you. For me, I will never do any work on Sunday because that's my Sabbath. I believe that everybody should rest on the seventh day. So if there's an emergency, if I don't have a video ready, if a client needs something, I'm sorry. God says no.
Yeah.
And then also, I reserve Saturday, like afternoon and onward, and one other night of the week to spend with my wife. And one of the time slots that I have to work on content, it's optional. If my wife feels like we need more connection, that is the optional time I can take away so that I can focus on my relationship with her. Every Wednesday night, I lead a small group for my church. That is protected time. Nothing will change that. All those things are just examples, but you really need to put those things in place, or else it'll be easy for you when you're adding something on the side, like on top of your full-time job, top of other projects that you're doing. If you want to add content on top of it, it's easy for you to sacrifice those things that feel less urgent but are really, really important for the health of your soul, health of you as a person. That is something that I've had to learn the hard way. And I think when you take an honest look at your time, you have to look and ask yourself, like, what is the max that I can do, and stay healthy, and don't even get close to that. Like, do less than that. And if it is less than satisfactory for you, the amount of time that you're able to put in, maybe you're only able to put in 1 hour a week or 3 hours a week or whatever, and you're like, then what's the point? Like, I don't want to do this, You have to be honest with yourself. Maybe you can't. Mm-hmm. Maybe you should not do it. But also, if you do it for an hour, do it for an hour. That's fine. Like, consistency is important. It doesn't necessarily matter how frequent. It matters more that you post at regular intervals. Even if it's once a week, once every other week, same day, same time. It will still work. Yeah. What matters is that you do it for months at a time. That's kind of what I would.
No, that's great.
Say I could definitely go into that way more, but just big picture, those are the biggest lessons that I learned.
It's really good, and I think the sacrifice is quite often unseen with content creators. It's so easy to digest a 30-second reel, and sometimes it takes less than 30 seconds to digest, because before they've even finished the reel, you've scrolled to the next video. But that is a sacrifice of someone's time and their energy, and that is potentially hours worth of work. And just so people can kind of see a little bit into my life as well. The calculation I do is that 60% of my time generates 100% of my income. What that means is that 40% of my time is actually spent making Instagram posts that will never make any money, but they might lead to business generation in the future. But it's a passion thing. It's something that I'm committed to. But that does mean that, is there potential to have more clients? Yes, probably. Is there potential to do other things during the day? Yes, probably. But that is a sacrifice. And then in terms of boundaries, one of the things that I've kind of had to learn, especially with having a young family now, is that the evening is like the gap between like 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. The dinner time, the time to spend with our son Elijah, and whether that's bathing him or whether that's reading him stories or playing with him, whatever it is, and then putting him to bed, that I will stop work, whatever the cost, and I would take that 5 to 8 p.m. most nights, if not every night, and it will be time spent with family, and then I'll come back to work after that. And I think the pressure we put on ourselves for social media for clients, I think every client and most people on social media would want you to have a sustainable and balanced life. And if that means that you're late to posting, if you have to post the next day, if you have to get your project in a little bit later, it's just it's a sacrifice you have to make. And it's part of prioritizing where social media sits in your life. And if you're choosing, this is a great way to kind of identify where social media sits. If you're choosing, like you said, Edward, if you're choosing social media content creation over spending time with your wife or your husband or your family members, then you can kind of get an understanding that social media is taking priority over that. So there's definitely a way to balance it. I think most people you look at on social media who are putting out content every single day, or they're putting out really extravagant videos or graphics or whatever it is, the chances are their life isn't fully balanced because they're putting so much resources into that. So don't compare yourself to the creatives that are going hardcore every single day. And what often you'll find is that people go hard for 6 months and then they disappear because they're completely burnt out. You see this on YouTube all the time. You have a YouTuber that goes hardcore for 2 years, and then they'll post that final video saying why I'm not posting daily anymore. And it's always the same thing. It's like, I've been getting up at 3 a.m. every day and going to bed at 2 a.m. and having 1 hours of sleep every night. And it's like, I would rather you just post once a week and actually enjoy the content you make rather than be a slave to the algorithm. I think hopefully this conversation is not to call you out, listener, but to understand that there is a way to do this healthily, but it does require some realistic expectations. And sometimes that means that your desired output isn't going to be as much as you think it is. Or, you may have to step back off social media for a little while, or just reduce how many times you post, just to give yourself the time to reassess, to think about what you're doing, to reprioritize, and make sure your life is in order. I think when your life is in order, it's much easier to create from a place of health. And I think people who do well on social media quite often are the healthiest ones. The ones that you can really see that they're enjoying life, they're passionate about what they do, and they're not there for the criticism or the approval or the praise. They're there because they just want to share their journey. So I would love to keep talking about this, but we're kind of at time, and maybe this is a part 2 we have to do. I know I've said this a few times on the podcast, that maybe this is a part 2 we have to do, but this has been a really good conversation for me as well. I feel like I'm learning a lot about how to balance the world of social media, because, although me and Edward have been doing this for 4 years or so, the algorithm changes and people's behaviors change and the expectation changes, and we are still learning just the same as everyone. And we have to just make sure we're learning off each other as well and helping each other to be more healthy. So Edward, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience. Is there any final thoughts you want to say to the listener? I'm sure you've got some gold to say.
Yeah, I think just start, just do something, and you will figure it out along the way. Like, these things that I've been sharing, like both me and Ruben have gone through, like it was trial and error for us, and it will look different for you. What is healthy? What is your priority? What is your goal? Different. When I first started, I was posting every day. When I came back, I was posting 3 times a week. Now I'm posting 1 time a week because my priorities have changed. Just be constantly reevaluating. And I think as long as you're continuously asking the question and approaching it with the heart of, how can I do this but still remain faithful to God, to my commitments, to my relationships, I think you will eventually find a way that works and is sustainable, where you can be healthy. And I think that's the most important outcome. And I think you will get there if you continuously evaluate that and think that way.
Well, hopefully you guys are going to take a moment to think about that and process this. And if you guys have been listening to this and thinking, I know the person who needs to listen to this, go ahead and send it to them. Just send it as an encouragement and say, I think this would really help you. Because Edward's just got such a great insight into this, and has walked through a lot of this. So maybe if someone wanted to get hold of you, Edward, and maybe chat more, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Oh yeah, just DM me, Edward Creates, on Instagram, TikTok. I don't think you can DM me on YouTube, but you can comment. And then, or if you want to email me, there's an email button, I think, on all my profiles. I'd be glad to talk more about this. This is something I'm very passionate about because I went through it.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much, Edward, for joining us on the podcast. Again, if you guys liked what you listened to, please leave us a review or like whatever platform this is. Like and comment on YouTube, and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But Edward, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for joining us. And we've got 3 more episodes left of this season and some very exciting guests coming up. So stay tuned. We're coming out every week with these new episodes, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.